The desert was bleeding. Wind dragged walls of dust across the ravine, where 12 Navy SEALs lay pressed against crumbling sandstone, helmets scraped, lungs burning, guns hot. The night was supposed to be their shield, a black curtain to slip in, grab the target, and melt back into the dark. Instead, the valley had lit up like a trap. Muzzle flashes popped from the ridgelines, mortars thumped from unseen pits, and the enemy, better positioned, better hidden, had driven them down into the canyon floor like cattle driven to slaughter. Bravo 1. This is command status? Static. Then a strained voice. Outgunned. Outnumbered. No air cover. We can hold 15 minutes max. Inside the Nevada desert base, thousands of miles away, men in pressed uniforms watched the blinking green dots that represented living Americans and slowly saw the red dots grow around them. The air wing had already radioed in. Terrain too tight, no approach vector, can't get a strike bird in without losing it. Gunships had pulled off. Drones couldn't get angle. Helicopter evac was suicide. A young tech whispered the truth no one wanted to say. Sir, we're going to lose them. Then, through the cluttered comms, through defeat, through bureaucracy, through the cold tone of inevitable military math, a voice cut in, deep, a little older, a little worn, but steady the way sand is steady. This is Captain Jack Rourke. Permission to engage. The room went still. Rourke? Someone said, baffled. The janitor? Outside, in the dark of the maintenance hangar, an old A-10 Warthog that hadn't flown in years coughed to life. Its twin turbofan engines began to spin, first in protest, then in purpose, their growls swelling into a primal, familiar scream. Floodlights caught dust swirling around its wings. Inside the cockpit, a man in a gray jumpsuit, not a flight suit, ran his hands over controls he hadn't touched in a decade. When even the SEALs had lost hope, when the sky had said no, when command had started drafting a condolence letter, one singledad janitor decided to fly again. Because real heroes don't wait to be called. They just do what's right. Did this story touch your heart? Share your thoughts below, because sometimes courage isn't found in the sky, but in the human heart. Before he was the man with a mop, Jack Rourke was the man nobody could shoot down. In the early 2000s, at the height of the long desert campaigns, the A-10 pilots had a reputation: low, slow, stubborn, hovering like angry angels over ground troops. But even among them, Rourke was different. His call sign was Razor 1, and people said he could thread an A-10 through a canyon barely wider than its wings. He flew like he hated gravity, like he owed a debt to every soldier on the ground, like each flight was personal. He'd grown up poor in Ohio, the kind of boy who knew engines before he knew algebra. His father had been Air Force maintenance. Jack had listened to stories of Vietnam pilots in smoky kitchens. Planes were freedom. Planes were purpose. Planes were the one thing in life that made sense. The A-10 Warthog fit him like destiny. Ugly, thick-skinned, built to take a beating, and come back it was the working-class hero of aircraft. No sleek fighter glamour, no fly-by-wire ballet. Just armor, a tank-busting GI AU-8 gun, and a promise: I will not leave the men below. Jack had loved that. He'd loved something else more. Her name was Sarah, and she had laughed like she didn't know war existed. They met on base when he was 28 and too full of adrenaline for his own good, and she was finishing her nursing practicum. She calmed him, and he gave her the sky. A year later, they married fast, like all military couples who knew tomorrow could change everything. 2 years later, Emily was born tiny, pink, fist balled around his dog tags. For a while, he had it all. Missions that mattered. A daughter who thought he was a superhero. And a wife who waited at the window for his car. Then life, careless in its timing, took a harder shot than any enemy. It was raining the night Sarah died. Not a storm, just an impatient desert rain that slicked the highway near Henderson. She and Emily had gone to visit Sarah's sister. Jack had been on base, running after-action reports, irritated at paperwork. He almost didn't pick up his phone when it rang. The state trooper's voice was kind. That made it worse. By the time he got to the hospital, Emily was asleep with a bandaged elbow. Sarah was gone. A drunk driver. Wrong lane. Wrong second. She'd died, trying to shield their daughter. The Air Force gave him time off. Therapists gave him soft words. Command offered him instructor positions. Non-combat, But Jack, the man who used to race death over the desert, suddenly couldn't bear the idea of leaving his daughter even for a training flight. He sat by Emily's bed that night. She was 5. She looked up, with eyes still swollen from crying. "Daddy, don't go to the sky." Mommy went and didn't come back. It was a child's misunderstanding, but it hit like shrapnel. He made a promise then, not to a flag, not to a commander, but to a little girl holding a stuffed bear. "Okay, Bug. Daddy's not going anywhere." He turned in his wings 6 months later. Paperwork called it a voluntary separation. The pilots who'd flown with him called it tragic waste. But to Jack, it was simple. What good was saving strangers if he lost his own daughter? He took the discharge, took the smaller paycheck, took the quieter life. And he took the job nobody noticed. The Nevada Air Command Base was massive, a place where sophisticated aircraft launched to places nobody could talk about. Pilots came and went. Young, loud, invincible. Special operations units trained in secret hangars, intelligence briefings, rotating deployments, and between them all, pushing a mop bucket, was Jack Rourke. Gray coveralls, ID badge faded, the smell of detergent on his hands. Some of the old-timers recognized him. "Hey, weren't you Razor One?" He'd smile, polite. "Not anymore." He lived in a modest 2-bedroom rental on the edge of town. Mornings were for packing Emily's lunch, fixing her hair, teasing her about spelling tests. Evenings were for reheating pasta, checking homework, falling asleep to cartoons. He wore the same boots every day. He bought second-hand tools. He saved every scrap of money for Emily's future. But the sky never really left him. Every time he crossed the tarmac with a broom, every time he wiped down the belly of an F-16, every time he heard the faint whine of a turbine spooling up, something tightened in his chest. Not regret, exactly. More like an old muscle twitching, a memory of purpose. Sometimes he lingered at the far end of the base, where retired aircraft sat like old warhorses in a corral, sun-bleached, paint-chipped, but still magnificent. And there, under a canvas tarp, sat an A-10 that looked too familiar. He ran his hand along its fuselage. "Hey, girl," he murmured. "You still miss it too?" No one heard. No one cared. He was just the janitor. But the base had a way of remembering its ghosts, and war had a way of calling back the men it once needed. The night everything changed started quietly. A Tuesday. Desert wind. An understrength duty roster. Jack had drawn the late cleaning shift for the main operations building, big glass frontage. Situation room in the back. Secure comm center constantly buzzing even at 0200. He liked the late shifts. Fewer people, more silence, more time to think. He was mopping near the open door of the tactical room when the tone in the air changed. It wasn't the loudness, it was the urgency. Voices leaning forward, chairs scraping. The kind of sharp, clipped speech of men trying not to panic. He paused, mop in mid-swipe. "Repeat. Bravo team is fixed in position. Grid Delta 9. Incoming fire from northern ridge and east approach. We are black on air support." Another voice strained. "This is Bravo actual Sitrep unchanged. We are taking accurate fire. 2 men wounded, 1 critical. Hostiles closing. Requesting immediate CAS. CAS. Close air support." The kind of call the A-10 lived for. Jack's heartbeat kicked up. He edged a little closer, careful to look like he was just collecting a trash can. Inside, on the main screen, he saw it. Overhead satellite imagery of a canyon. Narrow. Sheer walls. No easy ingress. The blinking dot cluster was surrounded. A colonel leaned over the operator. "What we got in the air? Predator's too high and the angle's wrong, sir. Gunship is 10 out. But approach vector is bad. Apache can't get in low without getting chewed up. Fast movers can't do precision runs in that terrain. What about Warthog? None assigned, sir. And the ones we've got here are in maintenance or training. Besides, we don't have a rated pilot on standby." The colonel swore under his breath. "We've got a SEAL team on the ground. We can't lose them." The radio crackled again now from the field. Weaker. More desperate. "Command. This is Bravo. We are running low on ammo. We will hold as long as we can, but without air." The sentence trailed off. Everyone knew the rest. Jack swallowed. He'd heard that tone before. Afghanistan. A convoy pinned. He'd swooped in low, chopped up enemy positions with the GAU-8, and 10 Marines went home. That had been a good day. This would not be a good day, not unless someone flew. He looked at the screens, looked at the colonel, looked at the list of listed, active, cleared pilots. His name wasn't there. It hadn't been there for years. He should have kept mopping. He didn't. He set the mop against the wall, stepped into the doorway. "Sir." A few heads turned, annoyed. The colonel frowned. "This is a secure. I can fly the A-10 into that canyon." Silence dropped like a curtain. The operator looked at him like he'd said he could flap his arms and get there. The colonel's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" "Rourke. Captain Jack Rourke. Former 354th Fighter Squadron. Call sign Razor 1. Place?" Something flickered in the colonel's expression recognition, followed by disbelief. "Rourke? I thought you were retired?" "Yeah. But I was flying that terrain before half these kids wore uniforms. That canyon's tight. But the Hog can do it. You know it. I know it. You're not current. You're not even. Those men don't have time for current." Jack pointed at the screen. His voice didn't rise, but it hardened. "You send anyone else. You're sending them to die in a canyon before they even fire. You send me. I can get in. I can open a window. We don't have a cleared aircraft. You've got one in Hangar 6. Tail number 1765. She used to be mine." The colonel stared. "That bird is in training rotation. Not combat. Ready. She just needs fuel and ammo." Jack's eyes were unwavering. "And a pilot who isn't afraid of walls." Another officer stepped in. "Even if we let you, we can't officially authorize." Jack cut him off. "Calm. Then don't officially authorize it." For a long moment, the room held its breath. It was the young Lieutenant Harris who broke first. He'd been standing near the back, headset in one ear, eyes wide. He'd grown up watching old training footage of pilots like Rourke. To him, this wasn't a janitor. This was a legend in plain clothes. Harris glanced at the colonel. "Sir, if he's really Razor 1, he can do it." The colonel looked at the screen again, at 12 green lives inching toward red. Then he made the kind of decision they teach in leadership schools, but only really understand in war. He exhaled. "You get that bird in the air in 5 minutes, Rourke, and you better pray to God you still remember how." Jack nodded once. No salute, he wasn't in uniform. Just respect. He turned and ran, down the hallway, past the supply room he usually cleaned, past the break room with stale coffee, past 2 surprised MPs, out into the desert night, where the air tasted of dust and jet fuel. Hangar 6 loomed ahead, metal doors half shut. Harris was already there, breathless, waving him in. "Sir, I pulled her out of standby. She's still warm from training earlier. Fuel's low, but enough to get you there and back. Ammo, give me whatever is loaded. 30% GAU, no Mavericks, no JDAMs." Jack did the math. "It'll do." They climbed the ladder. The A-10 sat like a waiting beast. Ugly, glorious, patient. Jack slid into the seat, and for a heartbeat, he was 30 again. His hands fell over switches and throttles like finding an old friend's face in the dark. He flicked on the battery. Systems hummed. Harris stood on the ladder, eyes shining. "Sir, I watched your Iron Thunder run in training. You saved a whole convoy." Jack smirked. "Then let's save another one." Harris hesitated. "You've got a daughter, right? Emily?" Jack's hands paused just a little. "Yeah, she'll be proud." Jack looked straight ahead. "She won't hear about this from anyone but me." He lowered the canopy. The base tower crackled. "Uncleared aircraft. This is Nevada ground. You are not authorized to." Jack keyed in. His voice was the same one that had once calmed terrified ground units in firefights. "Nevada ground. This is Razor 1. We have Americans about to be overrun. You can write me up when I get back." He taxied. The engine screamed. The desert rolled under him. And for the first time in 10 years, Jack Rourke left the ground. The approach to Kandar Ravine was not made for airplanes. It was a slit in the earth, flanked by jagged outcrops and man-made fortifications that looked like they'd been carved specifically to repel air support. Anti-air teams had set up on terraces, not high enough for high-alt attack, not low enough to suppress from the ground. Smart. Lethal. But whoever had planned this trap hadn't planned for someone crazy enough to bring in an A-10 nose first. High above, Jack leveled for a moment. The night was clear. Stars cold. Below, muzzle flashes twinkled like evil fireflies around the cluster of friendlies. He switched to the SEAL frequency. "Bravo, team. This is Razor One," a rasping voice answered, strained from shouting and sand. "Razor One. This is Bravo Actual. Say again. We didn't think you were coming." "Traffic was bad," Jack said, deadpan. "You boys still breathing?" "Barely. We're boxed in. North and east. You clear us a lane. We'll move." "Copy. When I say run, you run. Stay away from the canyon mouth. I'm gonna make it ugly." Down below, Commander Davis of the SEALs looked up in disbelief. He'd been in the teams 16 years. He'd seen miracles. He'd made some, but looking up to see the silhouette of an A-10 Warthog coming in low over a canyon, no pilot should risk that was something else. "Who the hell is that?" A younger SEAL grinned through dust. "That, sir, is someone who doesn't want to write our obituaries." Jack rolled. He brought the hog down, 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 altimeter chirping warnings, terrain proximity yelling at him until the canyon walls were like red teeth on either side. The wind buffeted. The engines whined. But the A-10, born to fly low, tucked in like it was coming home. He saw the first anti-air nest on his HUD. Guns, guns, guns. He squeezed the trigger. The world tore open. The GAU-8 Avenger wasn't a gun so much as a metal storm. 30mm depleted uranium shells spat out in a screaming burst. Brrr. The sound rolling through the canyon like Judgment Day. The rounds chewed through sandbags, rock, flesh, steel. The anti-air position vanished in spray and smoke. On the ground, SEALs who'd been sure they were going to die threw their arms over their heads as the sky itself opened up to kill their enemies. "Move, move, move," Davis shouted. "He's giving us a lane." Hostiles scrambled, firing up at the impossible aircraft. Tracer rounds arced, some striking armor, pinging like hail on a car. The A-10 shook, but held. Jack banked left, the nose inches from the rock wall. Sparks flew where the wing almost kissed stone. He grinned, an old, savage grin he hadn't felt in years. "Still got it." He circled back for another run. Command was in his ear now. "Razor One, we're tracking your position. That corridor is too tight. You need to abort." "Negative. They're not out yet." "Your foil." "Not my first guess. Light rodeo." He dove again. This time the enemy was ready. A Manpad's team popped up on the western ledge, shouldering the launcher. Jack saw the heat signature too late. "Oh, hell." The missile streaked upward. He dumped flares, rolled. But in the narrow canyon there wasn't space to outrun the seeker entirely. The warhead detonated off his right side, shredding part of the wing. The aircraft lurched like a wounded animal. Warning lights bloomed red across his panel. Hydraulic pressure falling. Right aileron damaged. Engine 2 losing power. Harris's voice cut in from base, panicked. "Sir, you took a hit. You have to RTB." Jack's voice was steady, almost peaceful. "Harris, listen to me. Are the SEALs clear?" Commander Davis keyed in. "We've got 6 out of the kill zone. 6 still moving. We need 30 more seconds." "You've got it." He yanked the hog around. The bird was hurt now, she complained in every rivet. But this was what she'd been built for. Redundant systems. Armor. A pilot who refused to quit. Smoke trailed from his wing. The engine made an ugly grinding noise. But the gun still worked. He came in even lower, practically skimming the canyon floor. He saw them, the last 4 SEALs, dragging a wounded teammate, rounds kicking up dirt around their boots. Above them, on the cliff, 3 enemy trucks had rolled into position with mounted guns. Jack lined them up. "This one's for you, Sarah," he whispered. "And for the kid at home." He fired. The cannon roared again, shredding the trucks in a hail of metal. One exploded, lighting the canyon with orange flame. The SEALs ran under the fiery rain, sprinting toward the safer bend in the ravine. "Bravo, Actual to Razor One, we are clear. I repeat, we are clear. God bless you, whoever you are." Jack let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. He glanced at the small photo taped to the panel. Emily, gap-toothed, wearing a backpack too big for her shoulders. Told you, kiddo, he murmured. Daddy still flies. Then the second hit came. This one he didn't see. A lucky RPG from a lower ledge, angled up. It slammed into his underside, near the remaining engine. The explosion jolted him so hard, his helmet cracked the canopy. The cockpit filled with warning tones, fire alarms, the smell of burning insulation. He fought the stick. The hog wanted to roll, to die, to fall into the ravine. Not yet, he growled. Not yet, girl. He managed to pull her up, out of the narrowest part of the canyon, into slightly wider air. Enough to ditch. Enough to glide. Maybe. But on his status screen, fuel was bleeding. The engine was dying. He could try to eject. But the terrain was bad, and his altitude low. He could try to limp back, but that would risk crashing into civilian areas. Or, he could put the bird down in the open desert, eat the impact, and hope his body could take what the aircraft had already taken for him. He keyed the mic one last time. Command, this is Razor 1. The colonel's voice came, choked. Rourke. We saw your run. You saved them. Tell my daughter I kept my promise. Jack. But the line cut. From the helicopter that had finally been allowed to approach now that the guns were silent, the SEALs saw it. The wounded. A-10. Trailing smoke, limping like a torn eagle over the dunes, then dipping, disappearing behind a low ridge. A heartbeat later. A distant orange bloom. They stared. Commander Davis bowed his head. Damn, one of his men said quietly. That man was a janitor? Davis shook his head. No. That man was a United States warfighter who happened to be mopping a floor. The desert was quiet again. Too quiet. For the first time in hours, no engines, no gunfire, no echo of death rolled through the canyons. The sun, swollen and blood orange, was climbing over the ridge, spilling long shadows over the wreckage of the battlefield. Smoke still rose from the blackened scars in the earth, thick, oily plumes that looked like ghosts trying to escape the heat. The SEALs were alive, battered, bleeding, exhausted but alive. Commander Davis sat slumped against a rock, helmet off, sand caked to his face. His hands shook as he reloaded his rifle, though there was no one left to shoot. For a long while, he just listened to the wind, to his own heartbeat, to the quiet disbelief that still hummed through the survivors. Status check, he rasped. Sound off. One by one, the men called out. 12 voices. All 12. It didn't feel real. Who was he? One of them asked softly, gazing toward the far end of the canyon, where the A-10 had vanished behind a cloud of dust. Davis didn't answer. He'd watched the impossible, a single aircraft weaving through hell, holding the line when the rest of the world had given up. The sound of that cannon still rang in his ears, that brrrred like thunder announcing salvation. Another SEAL said quietly, He saved our asses. He saved all of us. Davis pushed himself to his feet. The radio on his shoulder crackled, half dead from sand and impact. He switched to the command frequency. This is Bravo Actual. Target neutralized. We're clear. But we lost our bird. The pilot didn't make it. Static. Then a faint, shaken voice from command. Copy that, Bravo. We have no record of any authorized air support in your sector. Davis stared at the radio. Then someone just broke every rule in the book to bring us home. He turned toward the rising smoke in the distance. God bless him, he murmured, whoever the hell he was. At Nevada Air Command, the night had ended in chaos and disbelief. The radar screen still flickered faint echoes of the A-10's transponder, now silent. Maintenance crews had rushed out to the runway after the final transmission. Tell my daughter I kept my promise. No one moved for a long time after that. The colonel had stood with both hands gripping the edge of the console, staring at the blank signal until the first light touched the glass. When the message from Bravo came in all SEALs rescued, no friendly survivors in the air, there was no cheering. Just a heavy, painful quiet. Lieutenant Harris sat on the floor beside the comms unit, headset still around his neck. His eyes were red, not from the sandstorm outside, but from something heavier. He did it, he whispered. The son of a bitch actually did it. No one corrected him. In the hangar, the empty space where the A-10 had sat was already gathering dust again. Mechanics, who had once laughed at the janitor's obsession with old planes, now stood silent around the oil stains on the floor. Harris found himself walking there without realizing it. His boots echoed in the hollow space. The scent of burned fuel still lingered in the air. Phantom exhaust, phantom courage. On the workbench nearby lay Rourke's maintenance badge, half melted from heat. Harris picked it up and traced the faded letters with his thumb. Rourke. J.A. Facilities Division. Facilities. Not pilot, not captain. He clenched his jaw, fighting back a surge of anger and pride all at once. Sir. A voice called softly behind him. It was a young mechanic. Command wants us to prep a recovery team for the crash site. Harris nodded. I'll go. You don't have to. I said I'll go. The desert stretched endless and indifferent. By midday, the search team found what was left of a 10-tail, 1,765. The wreckage was scattered across a half-mile radius. Pieces of twisted aluminum, glinting like fish scales under the sunday. The forward fuselage had plowed deep into the sand, nose buried, wings torn apart. The shark-mouth paint was barely visible beneath the soot. Harris crouched beside what remained of the cockpit canopy. The glass was shattered inward. Inside, the seat frame was twisted. Burned, but empty. No body. The medic frowned. Ejection? Harris shook his head. Negative. Seats still bolted in. He didn't punch out. They found a trail of footprints, faint, staggered, leading north away from the crash, into the dunes. Blood darkened the sand every few steps. Jesus, one of the men whispered. He walked. They followed for nearly a mile before the tracks vanished into the wind. No body. No sign of life. By evening, the report went up the chain. Pilot presumed Kaya. Body unrecovered. At the base, the colonel read it in silence. Then he set the paper down and said quietly, "File it, and make sure his daughter's notified." Harris stood in the doorway. "Sir, she's just a kid." The colonel looked older than he ever had. So was half the world when it learned what heroes cost. 3 days later, the base chapel overflowed. There was no casket, just a folded flag on a pedestal, and a photo Jack Rourke, smiling in his flight suit, years younger. The caption under it read, Captain Jack Rourke, United States Air Force, retired, Razor 1, end of section, 2S, end of section, Razor 1. The SEALs from Bravo team were there, some on crutches, some with arms in slings. They'd flown in from overseas just to stand in the back row. Commander Davis approached the colonel before the service. "Sir, permission to speak." "Go ahead. We'd like to say a few words." The colonel nodded. "You more than earned that right." When Davis stepped up to the podium, he didn't need notes. "We were trapped," he said, voice gravelly. "Pinned down, cut off, no way out. I've seen good men die in better situations. And then, we heard it. That sound. That cannon. You don't forget it. The kind of sound that makes you believe in miracles." He paused, swallowing. "We didn't know who he was. We didn't care. All we knew was that someone up there had decided we weren't going to die today. Later, we learned his name. A janitor. A father. A man who'd already given everything once and decided to give again." His voice broke slightly. "I've met plenty of heroes in my life, but none like him." The chapel was silent. Even the air seemed to stand still. At the end of the aisle, Emily Rourke sat beside a young female officer assigned to escort her. She wore a simple white dress and clutched a teddy bear whose fur had faded to gray. Her legs swung above the floor too small to touch the ground. When the colonel presented her with the folded flag, her hands trembled. She looked up, eyes wide and wet. "Did Daddy help them?" she asked softly. The colonel knelt to her level. "He did. He saved 12 soldiers. Because of him, 12 families will see their sons again." She nodded slowly, the way a child absorbs a truth too big for her age. "Then, he did what Mommy would have wanted." The colonel's voice cracked. "Yes, Emily. He did." She hugged the flag to her chest. "Daddy said heroes don't die," she whispered. "They fly." No one in that chapel could breathe after that. A week later, the desert changed its mind. Satellites, scanning the crash zone for secondary analysis, picked up something strange. A heat signature faint, pulsing, human. Coordinates near the ridge, north of the impact. The report reached the colonel's desk at dawn. He didn't hesitate. Get me a medevac and a recovery unit. Now. Harris was already in the hangar when the order came. He didn't even ask permission. He grabbed a vest, a headset, and climbed aboard the helicopter as it spooled up. The flight was short. The crash site hadn't changed, but the light had dawned, spilling pink over scorched metal. As they circled low, the medic leaned out. There, under the wing section, the chopper flared. Dust exploded outward. Men jumped down, running, and there, half buried under debris and sand, was a man. He was barely recognizable, uniform torn, skin burned, face blackened by smoke. But his chest rose and fell in shallow, stubborn rhythm. Harris dropped to his knees beside him. Captain Rourke. It's Harris. The man's eyelids fluttered. A cracked whisper escaped. Harris? Harris grabbed his hand. Yeah, we've got you, sir. You're safe now. Rourke tried to smile, but his lips were blistered. Did they make it? Every one of them. You did it. A small sound left Rourke's throat, half laugh, half exhale. Good. Tell Emily. His voice faded. Tell her what? Harris begged. Rourke's head tilted slightly. His breathing slowed. But the words came out. Soft. And sure. Daddy kept his promise. Then his eyes rolled back. Get him on the bird, the medic shouted. They lifted him onto the stretcher. IV lines already sliding in. Oxygen mask pressed over cracked lips. As the helicopter rose, the desert below seemed to shimmer like it was letting go of its secret. When Jack woke, it was to the antiseptic hum of the base hospital. Light filtered through half-closed blinds, sharp and white. Machines beeped steadily beside him. His body felt like a map of pain, ribs cracked, leg bandaged, skin grafted. But he was alive. For a long moment, he thought it was a dream. The kind where you wake up mid-mission, mid-life, mid-something you can't finish. Then he heard a voice. You look like hell, sir. Harris stood in the doorway, grinning through tears. Jack tried to speak, but his throat was dry. The nurse pressed water to his lips. How long? He croaked. 4 days since we found you. Another week since the crash. SEALs? Home. Every one of them. Jack's eyes closed. Relief washed through him, warm and heavy. He whispered, Good. Harris hesitated. You weren't supposed to survive that, sir. Jack smirked faintly. Guess I didn't get the memo. He looked toward the window. The desert stretched beyond the glass, bright and endless. Somewhere out there, his A-10 lay in pieces, but he'd brought 12 men home. That was enough. He drifted back into sleep, to the sound of machines ticking like distant engines. It was evening when Emily arrived. The nurse opened the door softly, letting her in. She hesitated at the threshold, clutching the same folded flag she'd been given at the funeral. The teddy bear peeked out of her backpack. Jack stirred. His eyes opened slowly, still hazy from medication. And when he saw her, for a second, he didn't breathe. Bug? Her head snapped up. Daddy? He smiled, cracked, weak, but real. Come here, kiddo. She ran. The flag slipped from her hands as she threw herself into his arms, sobbing into the rough fabric of his hospital gown. He winced at the pain but held her anyway. Tighter than any bandage could hold him together. I thought you flew away, she cried. He pressed his face into her hair. It smelled like the lavender shampoo Sarah used to love. Never without you, Em. She pulled back, wiping tears. They said you saved the soldiers. Yeah, he whispered. They needed help. Her eyes were wide, serious. That's what Mommy would have done. Jack swallowed hard. That's why I did it. They stayed like that, father and daughter. The living proof that promises can survive, even fire. When she finally fell asleep, curled beside him, her hand gripping his, Jack stared at the ceiling, listening to her breathing. For the first time in 10 years, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. Outside the hospital, the world had found out. News outlets ran headlines that seemed too cinematic to be real. Singledad janitor flies, A-10 into fire to save Navy SEALs. Forgotten hero brings hope from the sky. The Pentagon called it an act of exceptional valor. Politicians wanted photos. Reporters wanted sound bites. Talk shows debated whether it was madness or miracle. Jack refused every interview. He didn't want cameras. He didn't want medals. He just wanted to go home. But Harris visited him every day, bringing updates from the base and letters, hundreds of them, from soldiers, pilots, kids, widows, people he'd never met. You reminded us what courage looks like. You made me call my dad and tell him I love him. You made us believe again. Jack read them in silence, often setting them aside before finishing. They were beautiful, but heavy. He didn't think of himself as a hero. He'd done what needed doing, the same as he always had. Late one night, as the ward lights dimmed, he looked at Emily sleeping in the chair beside his bed. He thought of Sarah, of promises made, of skies flown and skies lost. You were right, love, he whispered into the dark. They still need us. Just not the way we thought. A month later, the base gathered in Hangar 6 again. This time, not for mourning, for remembrance. The air was cleaner. The space felt sacred. The A-10's empty spot had been turned into a memorial. On the wall hung a large bronze plaque, Captain Jack Rourke, Razor 1, for acts of extraordinary heroism and self-sacrifice in the defense of fellow servicemen. Below it, encased in glass, lay his scorched dog tags, his maintenance badge, and a small photo of Emily taped beside Sarah's smile. When Jack entered, supported by a cane, the hangar fell silent. Every soldier, mechanic, and officer stood to attention. Some saluted. Some simply nodded. Emily walked beside him, holding his hand, her chin high. The colonel stepped forward. Captain Rourke, you've already received every word we could give. But there's one more thing the Air Force owes you. He held out a medal, the Air Force Cross. Second only to the Medal of Honor. Jack looked at it, then at Emily, then shook his head. Sir, I didn't do it for that. The colonel smiled faintly. We know. That's why you deserve it. Emily tugged his sleeve. Daddy, take it. For Mommy. He smiled and let the colonel pin it to his chest. Applause echoed through the hangar, soft at first, then rising, rolling, filling the steel belly of the building like thunder. Outside, the sun set over the runway. For a moment, the light caught the name Razor 1 on the plaque and made it gleam gold. Weeks later, life settled into something like normal. Jack worked part-time at the base, again not as a janitor, but as a flight instructor for new recruits. He didn't fly much, his legs still ached, his lungs still carried smoke. But he taught, and when he spoke, even the cockiest rookies shut up and listened. Every Friday evening, after class, he and Emily would walk the runway at sunset. She'd skip beside him, asking endless questions. Daddy, how high did you fly? High enough to see the curve of the earth. Were you scared? Every damn time. Then why'd you do it? Because fear's only the fuel, kiddo. Courage is the fire. She'd smile like she understood. And maybe she did. One evening she looked up at him. Can I fly when I grow up? He grinned. You can do anything, even if they say I can't? Especially then. The wind carried the faint echo of jet engines. Training flights painted white scars across the sky. He looked up, heart swelling with something between pride and nostalgia. Somewhere beyond the clouds, maybe Sarah was watching. He liked to think she was.